Hi everyone, I'm Pumi. I also have with us today Thamali and Shazad. If you can just wave,
Hi.
recognize you. So we're actually a team that work with private enterprises and owners and founders just like yourselves of different shapes and sizes. We work with them on governance, structuring, growth, business efficiency, and we work with a lot of international clients as well. Between the three of us, we have about 40 plus years of experience, but that doesn't make any of us old. I'm sure you can see that. And also, what I would like to actually say is to set the stage. These are tough times, but if you believe it or not, you would have seen that there have been billionaires that have become richer even during these tough times. And these are people who have had insight just like yourselves, and they've been doing the right things at the right time. So what we're trying to do today is really speak to you all and try and open up your minds to address the uncertainties and maybe take a stock of the certainties and help you plan and help you propel your business, even though we know that there are uncertain times ahead. Right, so with that, I'd like to start off by doing a general mood check around the room, which is basically that. I know it can be quite stressful, or maybe you're quite happy where you are at this time right now. So just bear with me for a second and we'll pull that slide up. Yeah, there we go. So what's the mood like in the room? So if you can use the chat boxes and rate your mood at the moment, looking at the screen. Sorry about that. Yeah, there we go. Chilled at a 10 and 1 to say that I'm quite stressed out right now. You could use the chat boxes to put the mood in. All right, quite chilled. 7 and 9's coming up. Okay, so also another one followed by that is to say, looking at the current situation and how the current environment is like, how do you feel at the moment? Do you think that it's like going to be around for just a month or two, 6+ months, or do you think it's going to be like Ice Age? It's going to feel like forever if it's like the Ice Age. Hatch is quite positive. We have the flooding effect from some, 12 months to recover. Okay. So we're seeing different hopes. I think what we're seeing mostly in the environment is that it's 6+ months. So that's what we're looking at. Yeah, so a lot of people saying flooding effect. Good. Right, so let's now move on to the introduction, at which point we're all going to switch off our videos and then we'll take it from here. Thamali?
Yeah, so although I know there's mixed feelings in the audience, how they feel about, definitely it's no doubt we all feel uncertain about it. But I personally feel that today's group, in fact, should be quite excited about this situation, because when I looked at the participants list, I could see there were quite a number of startups who's joining with us today, and also some of the family-owned businesses who's joining with us. So before I tell you why I feel that you need to be excited about it, is it possible for some of you to tell me, like, what's your biggest strength you feel right now is? Just a quickly, if you could type in as to what you feel, what your biggest strength right now is. Any idea? Anyone wants to respond? Okay, looks like you don't feel there's absolutely any strength. Okay, I can see one. Oh yeah, adaptability of the team to the situation, of course. Yeah, that's something, and that those lines I'm looking at. Supporting others. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, just quickly to move on. I feel your biggest strength right now is ability to change, the agility. Looking at the group today, most of you are either startups or family-owned businesses. Yeah, of course, as an SME, easier to adapt to change. I think one respondent, yes. So your biggest strength is ability to change. And why am I saying the ability to change is the biggest strength is because at these times we should be able to make find opportunities and decide how are we going to make quick decisions. Now that is your biggest strength. Now this is a significant competitive advantage that you would see compared to your large players in the market, especially your competitors, the large competitors in the market. Your biggest competitive advantage is being able to make quick decisions and ability to very quickly change. Right. So, but you may have competitive advantage, but for you to get benefits out of it, you need to plan for it. You need to know how to face this situation with a plan. So that's why we have lined up this session. In fact, we are also quite excited to present to you because we feel you have the biggest benefit. You can derive the biggest benefit out of these challenges that comes through if you face this situation right. So for the next 1 hour, 1 to 1.5 hours, we are going to take you through, give you some tips or give you some ideas as to how you could plan and then face this situation. And if you take action, I'm sure all of us would walk out smiling from this situation. Hear me?
Right. Thanks, Damali. Right. So let's get started. Let's see what we have lined up for you today. And I'll try and give you a brief understanding of where we're headed, and then let's get to it. First of all, we're going to show and try and understand together how we're going to assess the current situation. Our current situation as a business, and then also looking at the implications of the environment that we're currently in. Then what options do we have? Do we thrive as a business? Do we try and survive? Or are we even contemplating shutting down? I certainly hope we're not contemplating shutting down. And then based on that situation that we think we're in at the moment, what other options do we have? What can we explore? Future is something that we're not going to touch upon too much because there's a lot of volatility and there's a lot of change. At the moment, every day is a different situation. So as owners, leaders, together with your boards and your leadership teams, what we should be currently doing is sitting down, looking at the environment. Once we have an assessment of our current situation, try and reimagine where we're going and also try and simulate based on our understanding and whatever the environment looks like. So hopefully today, after today, you'll have a better footing to even simulate the future environment. Let's get started by assessing the current situation. So before we get to the details of it, what I really want to say is that why are we doing this, right? Let's ask ourselves that question. Why is assessing the current situation really important? If we don't know what we are at the moment and what our current situation is, it's very difficult to plan. And it's very difficult to take action and prevent certain things from happening. I mean, Corona seems to be, or COVID-19 was a nasty surprise. But right now, given the situation we're in, if we don't know what our current situation is, we might have more nasty surprises coming our way. And those would have been in our control as well. So to prevent that, first things first, what are we going to assess first? First, I hope we've already done this because we're now 3 weeks in and we've been at home for 3 weeks, that we've looked at our people, their health and safety, and then we've also taken care of that situation. So today we're going to focus on the next biggest thing, and this is liquidity. Liquidity is like water or oxygen, it's life. If we don't have liquidity, and that's why they say cash is king, we wouldn't have room to breathe. We wouldn't have room to sustain ourselves. So it's very, very important. And that's the first thing we're doing at the moment. It's the first thing we're doing with our clients at the moment, is taking a stock of where we currently stand in terms of liquidity. Then putting down our numbers for the next week, the next month, the next 6 months, and then 12, 24, and so on. So this is what we need to first address. Trying to do this might sound simple. So I'd like to ask all of you to put down on the chat box as to what you think you need in order to assess your current cash position in terms of liquidity. What information do you need? What are you going to do about it? It'll be good to kind of hear from all of you. Any thoughts? Okay, we don't seem to have too many thoughts on that yet. So let's move on. Let's get to it. Receivables to be collected. Yes, that's right. So let's get to that. Before we get to the details of it, I think it's very important for us to understand what a cash balance forecasting looks like. And why are we doing this? Because we need to know our basics first. And when we are in a crisis, generally, it's very important to go back to the fundamentals. And then why are we spending time telling you this? We're spending time building up on cash and the importance of cash because we want to do an accurate and detailed analysis of our cash and try and get it as accurate as possible given the current scenario. Yes, most of you are right. Yes, all of you are right. Actually, put down the right details. So let's just do a quick snapshot of it. Pay salary for the next month. Yeah, you're right. So that's what it is. Your cash inflows are your opening cash balance, which is what you have in your bank and your cash in your hand. Collection from debtors, payments to creditors is your outflows. Salaries are your outflows. In addition to that, you may have committed to some capital expenditure. You may have interest costs that you might have to pay. But also you may have proceeds coming in from other sales, disposal of investments, debt that you might be able to get in, like borrowings, for example, or equity funding. So this is a snapshot. We have to keep this in mind when we're going to understand the implications of COVID and how that is impacting our cash balance. The more accurate that you can make this, the better. But a bit of a warning, it's not a one-time thing. It's not like we're going to sit down today and do our cash flow forecast and we can go to sleep and be happy until things settle down. Given the environment and the changes, we have to keep updating it. We have to keep monitoring it. This should be your go-to, or your, like, how would I say this? This is your notebook which has this list, and this is what you're going to keep amending, and this is what's going to help you make decisions. So keeping that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to Jane. We like to call her Jane. And this is how I think I felt when COVID hit. And I think most of you would feel like Jane. Hands up if you feel like Jane at this point when you're thinking about your cash situation. Maybe you can give us a thumbs up on the chat box. If you're not, great. So if you're feeling like Jane and you don't know how the different factors and the environment is impacting my current position, we have created a small tool to help you go through that thought process. So this is what it is. It's a snapshot and a broad understanding of how COVID could impact different aspects of your business and how therefore that can impact your cash position. So what we're trying to look at is how these different aspects will impact your cash. I'd like to ask you guys what you think the impact of COVID on these factors that I've circled, because we don't have time to go through everything in a lot of detail. So we'll take a few examples and hear from you as to how you feel these are being impacted and how that's going to impact my cash flow. And what we'll do is we'll go through some of these and brainstorm some ideas. But also what we'll do is we'll share with Hatch a checklist that we have, a broad checklist, which will help you think through the different aspects and then come up with your cash flows. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact any one of us and we'll be happy to help you. So let's look at customers, contracts, suppliers, and global trade, and hear from you as to how these are impacting your businesses and your cash flows. Okay, suppliers are not giving credit anymore and insisting on cash up front. Yeah, tough one. Okay. Oh, this is just a positive thought amidst all the negativity that I thought I'll just put the picture of the billionaires who just got richer. But keeping that in mind, which means there is a plus side to this whole thing for some of us, let's just go through some of these factors. So if you look at your cash inflows, some of the factors that you need to think about is if you're doing business globally, you might think it's a bad thing. I mean, we do a lot of international work as well. And the first thing we were like, oh no, no travel. So once that happened, the first thing that we thought about was, can we work virtually with them? Because thanks to people like Zoom, I think we're closer to the globe than we ever were. We have much more time to connect with people elsewhere. So that's something to look at. But then on the downside, yes, if you are not in an essential services business and you're like in garments, or you're a supplier to such a service, then you will have an issue. And that is something that you have to take a stock of. Also, is your business benefiting from social distancing? Anybody has an idea as to what businesses would benefit from social distancing other than for Zoom? What are we all doing at home other than for working from home? Potentially, okay, delivery is one, yes. Telecom, yes. Entire IT industry. Gaming, yes, there we go. We've got gaming as well. So I was actually thinking of gaming, so well done, Jonathan. Right, so that's the thing. So if you're a business like that, then you wouldn't really have an issue. So your cash is not really being impacted. Then, of course, if you're a service or a products provider to somebody who is in essential services, you might have tricks in which you can collect your money early because you might be able to ask for an advance. So these are things that might affect your cash inflows when it comes to customers in a very brief way. If you're somebody who can replace an imported good, given the current situation, like Lankan products and Lankan services, that might be something that could be affecting your cash inflows and outflows. So we're just trying to give you a couple of ideas so that you can start thinking of it. A lot of you have great ideas as to what industries are not being affected at the moment and who are thriving. That's great, guys. Contracts. I thought I'll touch on contracts because this is something that can be a little complicated. You might need to get your lawyers involved, but it's an act of God. Corona-19 would be considered an act of God. So in situations like that, especially when you have long-term contracts, it's very good to go back and review those terms. First of all, do your customers need that service from you? Are they going to pay you? If you're in work in progress, are you going to continue doing that? Because are they going to really pay you on that? It'll be the same when it comes to your suppliers as well. Another thing that when it comes to contracts is your rent contracts. That's something that you might need to look at and negotiate with as well. And another thing when it comes to outflows that I thought would be interesting is, have you thought about what you're going to do when we do start working again properly and full time, when your offices open, in terms of the safety of your people? Are you going to sanitize your office? Is that going to cost you? How are you going to transport your people? Are they going to work in shifts? Is that going to cost me some money? How is that going to affect me? So these are some of those ideas, and we just have an hour to go through everything. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to leave you with those thoughts. There's some on the slide, and we'll email you the checklist. And when you've got questions and you need clarification, please feel free to call any one of us. We're available and we're working from home. At the end of this whole process, guys, you should have, and I would say, a relatively accurate and well thought out cash balance forecast. How much am I realistically going to have next week? How much am I realistically going to have in a month, 3 to 6 months to a year? But do we stop there? Is that it? I mean, is that it for all of us? Not really. There could be things that you can do to enhance your current position from where you are at the moment. And that's what Thamali is going to take you through now. Thamali?
Yeah, right. Let's move on to the next slide. And so just like Pumi said, now that we have really forecasted as to what my cash position is going to be, we have probably a Excel screen or a piece of paper which will say how much money I need. But the next step that you're going to do is extremely important to ensure that you will get through this crisis successfully without, hitting a wall. So let's take a few guesses, I think, as to what can you do with this situation. I think anyway, Pumi gave the answer. Your next step is enhancing your cash position as much as possible. Once you forecast, you know what are your expenses, what are your inflows. The next step is to see how can I improve this cash position going forward. So what I'll do within the next couple of minutes is to give you some tips, and not very complicated ones, but simple tips as to what you can start probably from today. So let's start with Piyush's next slide. Let's start with the most, probably the easiest one, the one that you can easily control. It's not, I wouldn't use the word easy, but something that you have control in. Let's talk about our cash flow cycle or working capital cycle, so to say. Now, why am I talking to you about this? It's extremely important, just like Pumi said, you maintain healthy liquidity position with you at all given times. One of the critical mechanisms of managing this is managing your cash flow cycle. Think about it. Every time what happens is the cash that you have in hand will convert into inventory, and the cash will start sitting in your warehouses. Or if you sell, you will give credit to your customers. Your cash then will start sitting with your customers. So what happens is this cash will go through a cycle, and longer you leave your inventory in your warehouse, longer you give your customers to keep your debtors, keep your money with them, longer the cash cycle is. The technique here is reduce the amount of time that inventory will sit in your warehouse. The receivables will stay with your customers. So let's take a look at this. Let's start. The easiest one would be your debtors. I saw some of the chat box, in the chat box, some of you saying the first action to take is collect your debts. Exactly right. So how do you do that? There would be certain strategies. Give discounts to people who's, probably might take time to settle. At this point, even thinking of an extended discount would be of benefit to you. And also look at certain strategies like talking to your most loyal customers and then getting some payments in advance. Probably if you think you're in essential service, or if you're in delivery, if your service is currently in significant demand, one technique also would be to take some money in advance. And look at your inventories or even your payables. Now, inventory days are something that you should reduce. That is where the number of days that your inventory will stay in your warehouse. Remember, it's cash sitting in your warehouse. So you need to think of ways to push these inventories out as much as possible from your warehouse to convert it into cash. Now, when you also have to pay your suppliers, it's important if you can negotiate. I saw someone responding to say it's very difficult to get credit from these suppliers now. However, if you can, if there is a way to negotiate or even use the maximum credit period that you can give, you will extend your cash outflows, time that you get. So with all these techniques, what you will do is you reduce the cash being away from your bank account or your drawers. So you will improve your cash flow cycle. Now, while we're at inventory, it's important to talk about pricing. One of the key strategies people use to remove the inventory from the warehouses soon is using the price. There are two types that you could look at. I want to actually quickly talk about short-term changes that you do to your price. At this time, if you're looking at your cash flow cycle, you'll be looking at quick changes that you want to do with your price. That's like giving significant amount of discount so that you can get more, your cash cycle would be faster. While you're thinking about that, it is also important you think about long-term changes to your price. So if you're currently in business and if you're selling a product or a service, I'm sure there is a mechanism in which you have priced your product. Some pricing strategy you would have followed. Probably there is this particular formula you used, but it's important to now think and remember the world that we will walk outside once the lockdown is over is going to be a different place. Your customers you knew are not the same. Your competitors are not the same. The economy itself is not going to be the same. So it's time for you to think of your pricing again. Look at your pricing formula. If you were pricing your product based on cost, it's time to look at it. If you were pricing your prices based on your competitors' pricing, it's time to look at it. So while you're in lockdown, these are things for you to start thinking of. If you are trying to do a short-term price fix to get your inventories out, that's great, but also think of your pricing strategy from long-term perspective as well, because the market that we knew a couple of weeks ago is not the one we are going to go out to once the lockdown is over. So it's important to look at our pricing strategy. The next one is when we talk about cost is about our expenses. This is the most common area which all of us will start going and start slashing down our expenses. But when you start looking at reducing expenses, it's not that easy. You need to look at expenses in two different angles. One is your fixed cost, the other one is your variable costs. Now, let's look at your fixed costs first. I think slashing down fixed cost would be a little bit easier than your variable costs, because if you look at your fixed costs, what are fixed costs? Fixed costs are ones that you know you will have to spend, whether your volumes are greater, whether you do sales or not, whether you stay at home or not, you might have to incur your fixed costs. Such expenses are like rent, maybe your insurance premium, maybe your fixed salaries that you have to pay. So fixed costs are the first ones that any one of us needs to take a good look at and see, do I really need these expenses for me to survive? Take a good inventory and see, ask yourself, be skeptical about it, ask and see, can I live without it? If you can, it's time to reduce it. Now, for example, it would be rent. Now, if you had rented premises, anyway, you're working from home right now. Think and see, is it possible for me to continue this way, me and my team? If that's the case, probably that's a big chunk of money that you will save. Another massive expense, which most of the companies now currently looking at, is fixed employee cost. Now, when you have employees that you pay fixed salaries, and if their pay is not varying with the volumes or your number of sales that you make, those are expenses that you need to rethink. Should I shift to a payment model that I could vary with my volumes or the sales or the performance? Now, you would see most of the hotels are now currently looking at it. Anyway, one good thing in hotels, if you are running a hotel or if you know how payment schemes in hotels goes, their fixed component of salary is very small. The balance salary is very variable based on the amount of sales that they make or the amount of revenue. Service charge will vary. So these are areas that you can start thinking of when you look at your fixed cost. So take a inventory of your fixed cost, have a critical review and see what are the costs that I can live without. If that's the case, make that decision and implement. The next area of cost or expense is your variable cost. Now that is quite hard. It's not as easy as fixed costs to reduce, because variable costs are certain things that just to give a quick introduction, variable cost is a cost that will vary with your volumes or your number of units that you sell or you produce. So if you are a business that you have to incur significant amount of variable cost, first you will need to again make a list of such expenses and see what are the ones can I reduce. Generally, if you would see nowadays, I can see some of the companies or businesses are going towards reducing frills, probably packaging, and the amount of expenses that they make in advertising. They reduce frills as much as possible so that they can reduce the cost of the production. If you can reduce this cost, probably these are the areas where you can understand new ways of doing things so that you can reduce your variable cost. But there is no general answer to give. The only way what you should do is list down all your variable cost, see and ask yourself, does this cost add value to my bottom line? Does this cost add value to my customers or to the product so that I can price it high? If not, it's a cost that you need to rethink or reduce. So that's probably is a way to look at your cost. Look at your fixed cost separately, look at your variable cost separately, have a critical look at it and see where you could reduce. The next one that I want to insist on is capital expenditure. Now, capital expenditure, probably 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago, you would have had great plans. You would have even decided to go on to different capital commitments. This is probably not the right time to go into commitments because times are significantly uncertain. You won't know what the next couple of weeks are going to be. So these are the times that you will not make significant commitments. Even if you have progressed towards a certain extent, if you can cut down, do that. Because when you tie up yourself, I can share an example. There's a client of ours who had spent significant amount on capital expenditure. So with that, your overheads are significant and you also get interest costs coming in. So moment you have significant amount of capital expenditure coming in, what happens is your competitive advantage becomes significantly low. So this is not the time to look at capital expenditure. Probably at least wait for some time until you have some amount of certainty or predictability. So we've looked at, these are the 4 key things that I want to leave with you about when you try to look at improving your cash flow position. But just one more thing, you would have all these strategies, all these ideas. Just if a couple of you can tell us if there's one thing that you need to significantly focus right now, given the fact that, like we at the beginning mentioned to you, you have the ability to change. You have the ability to make quick decisions. Your competitive advantage depends on the decisions that you make and how fast can you implement these decisions. No point thinking of these points and getting ideas and looking at your expense forever and ever unless you quickly go and implement fast. That will give you a significant mileage over your competitors. So think about it. These are a couple of areas that you need to immediately start looking at when you improve your cash flow. Yumi?
Right, thanks, Namali. So now, guys, at the end of all this, we will have a good idea of our enhanced cash position. So this is like best case scenario, and we'll keep implementing strategies. Like Namali said, we need to act on it. There's no point thinking about it. Make a decision and go forward. Yes, Gayani, survival of the quickest will win the day. Yes, that's right. So once we know our net cash position, we will also know what the future of our business looks like. Are you thriving? Great. Thumbs up. Keep doing what you're doing and keep enhancing your business. But if you're trying to survive, then you'll see how long your runways are. Is it a short term, medium term, long term? So if you know that you're going to survive, that's when you need to know this information mostly. And not be surprised and act now to kind of prevent a bigger disaster. But if you're thinking of shutting down because of liquidity issues, I don't think, and none of us actually think that it's a good enough reason for you to shut down and give up on your great business or your great business idea. There could be other options for you. I mean, there's borrowing, which is an option from banks and in other forms. There's equity. If your shareholders or your funders right now believe in your idea, they might be willing to extend more funding to keep your business afloat for longer. Sale of part of your business, I know that comes with a whole different bunch of complications, or even hibernation. I mean, hibernation is something that Marriott and some of these other businesses that Shehzad will also speak to you about later on are looking at, hotels specifically. So it's very apparent to us that revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash really is a reality at this point. But is that all? If you have cash and that's your business and that's the future of your business, is that all you have? What other assets do you all have in your business? They could be tangible assets or they could be intangible assets. Intangible assets that probably don't even reflect on your balance sheet in accounting terms. What are your other assets? Can we ask you to type it out in the chat box? Anybody? Right. So while you're typing those in, goodwill, investments, yes. Yes. Strong brand. You might have a strong brand. Yes, people, definitely. Loyal employees. That's one of your strongest assets that you currently have, and that could make or break your company. You have skills. Skills could, you might think is for one purpose, but it could even mean for like a whole different other purposes. You just have to start thinking about it. Your relationships, your shareholders will share some stories with you, which might open up your ideas about this. So given that you have cash as a certain balance right now, and these are the assets that you have, and now you know whether you're thriving, surviving, or shutting down, and you have a good snapshot of it. Is this all? Is this all you can do? It may not be all that you can do. So given the time we have, we thought we'll share a few ideas as to what you can do and give you some, open up your mind to some possibilities of what other businesses have done as well. Shehzad will take you through all this. Shehzad?
Like this. So number one, it will be pivoting and innovation. So what we have understood is throughout this uncertain time, it's very hard to keep up to one business. So you need to move on and then pivot. So we have used one of these examples. We call it the coconut tree theory. So if you take a coconut tree, you'll understand that you can use all the components of this coconut tree to generate revenue. What you need to do is use the same concept to your business and see what skills and resources you have at the moment and how these skills and resources can be utilized to make the optimum out of it. Through this, you need to make sure that your business brand should not be compromised. Make sure that it links up to your brand, and then you should move forward. Then you need to understand what is your cash impact. Like Thamali and Piyumi said, you need to see what your pricing, what your costs and your volumes are. So you need to go as lean as possible in terms of your costing, and then to generate a positive cash outflow. So in this situation, what we would do is, usually you will understand what your situation is and then generate the maximum out of it. I just want to ask you all a question. So if you are to pivot your business, what would it be? If you can just list down what the current business is, and then when you're going to pivot, what do you think is the best possible fit? Can you put it down in the chat box? All right, I'm not getting any answers. Can I just get few answers, please? All right, restaurants move into food essentials. Yes, correct. So I'll just give you some examples as well in the current situation and how people have pivoted. Delivery services, yes. So one of the good examples will be Yoho Beds. So Yoho Beds is a booking platform, and they usually collect their cash to credit. But now they have gone into the grocery delivery business. So what happens here is they have gone from credit business to a cash business, and since they have identified the tourism won't do for good for at least another 6 to 7 months, it's a good way of earning some cash to keep you going, to survive. So what these guys have done is, once there's another point to note here. So once this business is done, they can quickly shift the customer base into the Yoho Beds platform as well. So this is a type of customer acquisition which they have smartly done during hardship. Another example will be Vega Innovation. So I think, like you all know, it's a supercar which was developed by Sri Lanka. It's an electric supercar, but they developed a low-cost ventilator which is still subject for approval, but it will go to the hospitals as well. Another good example will be Alibaba.com. So during the 2003 crisis, that was SARS, they had to close down their entire building because they had infected employees in the building from SARS. During this operation, Alibaba is a B2B platform. So most of the business that they did was wholesale. They identified that the current employee base who are working from home like us was only utilized 25%, and there's another 75% which can be utilized for other businesses. What these guys did is, yes, if it's a C2C business, the operations will be much more because the customers are much more. So during this 2-week period, they were able to convert the Alibaba wholesale operations through a new website called Taobao, which is eBay in something like eBay in China. So these are some of the options that you can use, or even the opportunities during a crisis situation, just to survive, like Pimi mentioned. Next, I'm going to take you through a process called rethink, reimagine, and reinvent. Here, what you need to understand is, during a pivoting situation, you need to rethink. You need to rethink to see whether your product will be obsolete after the market recovers. And then you need to identify the work environment, whether it's competent, whether it complements the sale of this product. Then you need to reimagine to see if the current workspace accommodates change and diversification. And if required, you need to identify whether you're going to outsource or whether you're going to have it in-house. Through this, you need to reinvent to see what opportunities are out there and to see how you can execute the product effectively. Again, it comes to cash is king, where you need to see what your cash impact is and then see whether you're going to make a positive inflow of cash. A very important thing here, as startups, we see that a lot of us burn money, okay? And in a situation like this, we don't have the option or the luxury to do that. So we need to cut down on our cost and generate more revenue as possible. So we have this small example on financial innovation. We call it the Matchbox story. I will get Pumi, since she is very passionate about this story. Pumi can share the story. Pumi?
All right, Shazad. Thanks. So I'll make it really quick. And this was an actual real life example. The company was bankrupt, and then the new management came in, and the mandate was to shut it down. They had a factory and employees, and they didn't have money even to pay salaries, VRSs, let alone go through the closing of the business. So they had to find cash because they didn't really want to shut it down. So they had they thought to themselves, what are the assets that they have? And there were two things. They had a relationship with the distributor, and they had a relatively good relationship with banks, but they were not extending funding at this moment. And what they thought to themselves was, let me look at some products that have a relatively good quality, that have relatively good pricing that I could get in, and then also would give me some element of cash and an element of profit. So the story and why I like it is this business had no cash. And what they found was, they found a few products, but the one that turned them around was the Matchbox, is where they went in and said, okay, I've got a matchbox. I can be the second player in the market. I have a relatively okay profit, but let me negotiate with my distributors and see if they can pay me in 30 days. And they negotiated with their suppliers and said, we'll pay you in 45 to 60 days. And this was their skill in doing that. Once they did that, they had 15 to 30 days of cash in their business. And with this, they were able to expand the business. With that cash, they were able to expand the business. And actually, the bankers came in and they offered them a huge facility. So this company has since grown, gone into other products, and is still alive. So I think that's a great example, and I draw inspiration from it whenever we've had situations like this.
All right, thanks, Pimi. So I'll just move into my next option, which is there. Okay, so how would you reimagine your business through that example? Any answers that I can get? So this is the example which Pumi shared was something to do with financial innovation. If you are going to reimagine your business, any way that you can do it, you can answer on the chat box. Okay, I didn't get any answers, so I'm going to move from here, right? So guys, the next option that I would talk about is collaborate, share resource, and backward integrate. Very importantly, I think someone mentioned that sharing resources is very important in a situation like this. So that's correct. So you need to identify what skills and resources do you currently have, and then you need to identify what skills and practices or can be best utilized in a current situation like this. Then you need to identify who you can partner or share your resources with. Through that, you should be able to identify your ideal resources and then share the cost with others. So when it comes to a startup, what will happen is you will have additional resources in a crisis situation like this. So it's very important that you share them with others who require it and then reduce your cost. Again, the impact on your cash, if you collaborate, you can definitely increase your revenues, and then you can cut down on your costs so that through the sharing of resources. Some of the good examples of sharing resources and collaborating will be Dyson collaborating with TTP. Again, it's another ventilator example where Dyson is a retail manufacturer of vacuum cleaners, sorry. And then TTP is a technology-based company. So they collaborated together with the ventilator. Another good example will be PickMe, where the taxi service has collaborated with Satosa and Litrogas. The important thing is they're using their taxi profile to do the deliveries. So that is also something to do with collaboration. Another good example is NHS, where they have teamed up with the private hospitals to increase the staff load for the NHS so that they can fast track their operations in the hospital. When it comes to backward integration, what we have seen is this company called DuPont. They had limited supplies from this supplier. So they went and acquired that supplier so that the supplier can 100% be utilized by DuPont. What happened here is through this, they were able to expand their markets and then improve their revenue as well. I think we have a local example which Pumi can share with us. Pumi?
Yeah, so this was not really during the crisis, but in general, it's like a few generations old, this business. It's a family-owned business. And for generations, they've been doing this to their suppliers. They have like small and medium-sized suppliers. And whenever they've gone into funding issues or, bankruptcy sort of situations, they've always extended funding to them, or they have integrated them into their business, or they've maybe bought into those businesses in one way or the other. So it's a good way to kind of think about your suppliers if you're in a position to help them out. Or if you're a supplier, it's also a good way to start your conversations with your customers, because if they find you essential, they may be willing to either lend you funding or buy a part of your business or even integrate you into their business.
I think another good example will be a project that we worked in the Middle East. So what happened here is the customer funded the supplier so that he can scale up and supply to the entire Middle East region. So something to think about here is either you can backward integrate, or you can be a person who can be funded. So people, even the customer, if he's cash rich, he can help you with in a crisis like this. So a question for you guys again. What resource do you have in your business to collaborate or share your resources? Can I get some answers? Any resources that you have that you can share and then reduce your cost? It can be programmers, it can be any type. Okay. I'll be moving on. Yes, correct. Human technology, space in the business workplace. Okay, exactly, yes. Demand warehousing services, yeah, on demand. So another good example will be, now the next option will be business efficiency, outsource, in-house, or shred. Here, what I have identified is during this period, most of us we are working from home, and then basically you can identify what your core business strength is, and then whether you can outsource it or in-house it. One of the things that you should identify is there will be core business activities which need on-site as well as off-site activity. Whatever non-core business activity which can be off-site, you can outsource it depending on the situation. And then whatever core business activity which needs to be at office, you need to, that is a must that you need to have it in-house. Any business activity which can be, which is core, but it is off-site, maybe you can ask the employees to work from home and then save up on your costs such as electricity, rent, and even your broadband as well. So here the important thing is you need to cut the slack and then reduce inefficiency. You need to identify during the last 6 months or 7 months if you had any expenses which are not relevant at this point, cut everything and then be lean as possible. Again, the impact on your cash, identify what are the areas of overheads that is there, like Tamali explained, your fixed overheads or your variable overheads. Whatever you can cut, you need to cut and then make it more efficient. So the example here I'm using is Marriott and Funko. Funko is a toy manufacturer, and then Marriott is the hotel chain. What these guys did during COVID is they asked their employees to go on unpaid leave. So here the strategy for them was to identify staff who are specialized to go on unpaid leave, so that when this entire thing recovers, they can recruit them, they can take them back again. They can avoid the cost of training as well as time spent on these employees. So this is a very good example to manage your working capital if you identify the operations are not going to continue in an industry which you're operating at the moment. So moving on, you need to identify and then communicate to your employees that this is the structure we have, and then this is the way that we are going to operate, and agree with them on the situation to get their consent. So communication is very vital, and then you need to make the decision with them so that they understand and accept the situation in hand. To sum up and end, I think Tamali.
Yeah. So I think we've been speaking to you for the last, I think, almost about an hour. And very quickly, we were trying to give you 4 key messages. Number 1 is you need to assess your situation, and your liquidity is key, and keep a tab of your cash in hand and try and keep it strong as possible. And we also gave you tips as to ways as to how you could improve your cash position, like improving on your working capital or cash cycle, and looking at your pricing and looking at your fixed and variable cost. And also we were speaking to you about being innovative. That's your core strength, and use your innovating ability so that you could differentiate or collaborate, share, and then be innovative even in gaining efficiencies. Last but not least, it's all these things you could keep thinking, but your just like I think Diane mentioned, if you could be quick in implementing these decisions and getting and improving your business and changing, you will go through this without any impact. So I think we are all excited for you, and I think you should change. It is just like Pumi said that when we began, it is the opportunities, it is the challenges that will create opportunities for change. So I think though Jane looked stressed out at the beginning, we hope now you look happy, just like in this picture, and you feel that you could do it. You can do it. Now let's create a discussion. What we've learned, or we do a lot of these kind of programs. What we've learned is we learn from each other. So it's important. We want to open the discussion for you. So let's be mindful that we are in a webinar. If you want to speak, and I think we want you to speak, and when you want to ask a question, just raise your hand, and then we will call out your name, and then let's create a discussion. Of course, we can, Chandima, we can share the slides with you. We will be doing that, and also the checklist we'll be sharing with you. So we will on our cameras now, so that we can be a little bit more interactive. And you also could raise your hand, and let's create a discussion. Yeah, so any questions?
Yes, now sits. Ismail, you can unmute your mic.
Ismail, you can unmute and then speak.
Okay, I think now you're okay. You can speak now.
Hi, Naushad.
Oh, okay. You have an audio issue. So that's
All
okay.
right.
You can type out the question. That's fine.
Yeah. Anyone else want to create a discussion? Any questions or any tips that you want to share with the rest of the audience?
Okay, Tamali, we have one question. What about securing your top-end existing customers in the consumer business? From Riaz Rashid.
Hi. Okay, so we are talking about the world changing. We are talking about the businesses changing. But shouldn't we also look at securing our existing businesses, because all can't change overnight, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So can I take this question, please?
Sure,
I'll take
sure.
the question. Yeah. So a thought here, that definitely, Rashid, it's a good point. We have to, our focus should be securing our existing business. That should be the focus. And that is where we are trying to, that is the primary idea of us telling you to look at your cash position, to maintain your liquidity as strong as you can, is to assist you, that will assist you to survive in what you're doing, because that is where your core strength is. In case after you assessing your position, and when you feel, because in situations like this, information is key. Your information will give you two answers. One is, can I survive this difficult period? If the answer is yes, let's keep on doing what we're doing, and then improve your cash position and keep on doing what you're doing. But also sometimes when you analyze your information, you will realize the indications are not good for me. Then what is your option? Then you will have to become again innovative and start looking at other options. So that's the idea.
I have a question. Can I ask this from? Yeah. Now, given that most of the SME businesses are kind of hand-to-mouth situation, how will these tips that you give work in a practical sense?
Okay. So we gave you two types of options, rather, you know, let's talk about the ones that we were talking about, improving your cash flow position. Let me talk about your cash cycle. Now that is a very practical solution, which I'm sure each and every one of us are doing on daily basis. But in this situation, what we will have to do is be more conscious, do it more consciously. Now, for example, let's take a practical example. If you have inventory in your warehouse, in other words, that's your cash sitting in your warehouse. So think about it and try and see, then leaving this inventory in your warehouse, let's think of options to move it out of my inventory. That's where we were talking to you about. Let's look at your price. Can I even give a bigger discount and remove this and get my cash into my hand? And also look at your debtors. So the most practical way of looking at your business right now is looking at your cash flow cycle, because having your cash in hand, and if you're strong with your liquidity position, you're strong to sail through this situation. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry. Are you?
Is that?
Yeah, this is Zaufir here. Yeah, you did answer, but I still.
Go ahead, Zaufir.
I'm looking at businesses that are in the trading space. They might encounter more practical difficulties. That's number one that I have. And also the fact that this lockdown is something that is not going to end up by end of April. It can be a bit longer, given the current status of the curve where it stands for Sri Lanka. So given all that, now all those measures that we have in place might stretch, but beyond that stretch, that's where the challenge comes in, isn't it?
Correct. So it's important to understand where we are. You're right. This lockdown probably will extend. We're not sure for how long. That's all the more reason why we need to ensure our liquidity position is strong. Because it's as much as possible, have your cash intact with yourself, because then you're ready to face situations. I understand it is a very uncertain situation that we are facing right now, but with uncertainty, we need to also look at the ways in which we could sail through this. The idea that we were trying to give to the audience today, one of the key ways of going through any uncertainty situation is making your cash flow strong, and then looking at it in a very proactive and an innovative way, so that whatever we are going to face in a couple of weeks, we will be a little bit more stronger than our competitors. But I completely empathize with you. It is a difficult situation. So only thing what we can do is take control of things that we can change.
And to add to some of the questions that they've asked as well, Mali, one is somebody is in the hardware distribution now, sir. You're in the hardware distribution field, and the best way to collect dues. I mean, speaking to your customers is one, seeing if they can and they are able to pay. Also, some things that you could potentially try is giving a discount and then collecting your cash. If they're overdues, go after them. But if they're already overdues, they might be having problems. But your immediate sales, you could do it with advance payments as well if you're still doing sales. Somali, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, so probably another tip, if you're in hardware distribution field, or in fact, even if you're in any other field, would be, because all of our customers are also facing the same situation that we are in. So that's where we need to think of strategies where we could also help them to pay us, so that you will win together. Like give them settling you on an installment basis, or giving them a discount upfront, or probably tell them, let's pay me in advance and then give you a couple of more months to settle you, so that you secure your payment at some point. Then, like writing it off as a bad debt. So what we need to do right now is somehow think of ways, because you know your customers, think of ways that we can convert them into cash as much as possible. Janaka Jayasekara has a question. You can unmute. Hi. Hi. Hi, Janaka. Can.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for this opportunity. This bit of a practical angle to what we discussed today. Now, when we talk about managing your cash and reducing your inventory, so that, you know, the situation that we are in is very unique because it's not affected only one industry or one component in the supply chain. Now, I represent the tea sector, I work with the company, and I can easily say that had we not had 1 to 2 months of packaging materials and tea in our inventories, we would have come to a standstill, and that would have resulted in a huge impact even in the tea auctions, because some of the tea companies, the leeway that was given by the various authorities was, for example, they were thinking about the plantations initially and how the day wage earners would be getting their cash in when they come in, when they do their plucking and they hand it over to the plantations. And the initial 7 to 8 days lockdown was focusing on one aspect of the supply chain, not looking at it practically as to how these teas that were being produced at the factories would get sold at the auctions, which people have to come to the auctions and buy. And then once the teas are purchased by the various buyers, they have to use transport services, most of which are outsourced. And then they having to come and deliver it to the packing companies or the exporters. So it took a good 10 to 12 days for the regulator stakeholders to realize that it wasn't just one aspect that you need to look at in this whole supply chain. If under these circumstances, where it has a multiple effect on all segments in supply chain. So this is one scenario where had we not had inventory, it was so in a standalone scenario where you don't have to. You're looking at yourself. You're looking at your organization. Yes, it makes 100% full sense to look at managing inventory and having a just-in-time and stuff like that. But this is one instance where, because it's affecting the whole supply chain, and also secondly, when you're talking about shared resources, we also looked at, while we bring in our workers to our factories, whether you could allow those vehicles that we used for even our suppliers to also move around their staff. So we even looked at those scenarios where we could collaborate and share resources, because at the end of the day, it was to get the full supply chain going.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. I think that's great, Chair, because that is probably one of the good examples for all of us to know. When you collaborate with your industry, you will find some kind of answers. In fact, when you were asking, Janak, this question, I was going to also ask you, how about collaborating with your other, with the industry players itself, and then figuring out an answer? Because I completely agree with you. The situation is very unique. That's why we were also highlighting on innovation, figuring out ways of getting things done. So yeah, thanks for that, Chair.
Yeah, also Tamal is spot on, because this is the first time we did the tea auctions online, electronically. Oh. And I happened to go to our office where we had 3 or 4 tea tasters simultaneously buying from 3 different tea catalogs, which usually happens in a physical scenario. It happens in 3 physical locations within the same building.
Right.
And there are positives coming out because they were able to collaborate among themselves right in front of each other and optimize their purchasing. So there was, again, an extremely good positive that came out of us utilizing. I mean, it's still at an early stage, but an instance where it really paid off, and we were able to discuss and even get our directors to log in as well and see the live auctions, which doesn't usually happen when you actually have the physical system of the outcry system.
I think that's excellent. Thanks for that share, Janak.
I think we've got a lot of people from the tea industry 100% agreeing. Ruvindu saying it's a great positive. So I think it's right to say when there's chaos and crisis, people become more innovative because we're forced to do it and we're forced to survive. We've got a few more questions as well. Murtaza sent a question across saying, would this be a good time to buy off competition? And also in the construction industry, assuming not all are having cash flow issues, or would you suggest to do backward integration? Just a quick answer from me would be yes, those are options that you have. I mean, if you've got the cash and you've got that, if you're in that position and you can buy off, yes. And I think there are a lot of potential investors who are hovering around to buy distressed assets these days as well from the market that we are in, and from where we sit, we can see that. Is that your question really, Murtaza, or is it for you to be bought out by competition as well?
So while Murtaza gets, sorry.
So that's his question, yeah.
While
and would you suggest to do backward integration?
Okay, so while Murtaza gets back to us, just a quick thought is, yes, it's a good time to assess, buying over and investing. But when you invest, be careful, because the times, that's why I said, when you decide on capital expenditure, you need to be extremely cautious, because you yourself has to first be sure you have adequate buffer to stay alive, and then make your investments. It's a good time to buy. I think that's a great idea. But first you assess your position and then assess the company that you're going to buy. Because if you're buying over a company with a lot of debt, significant amount of employees, and then significant amount of committed cost, then your existing entity also will go into distress. So it's a good time to think about it, but it should be a very carefully thought of decision when you make that.
And I think to add to that is also to think about, I mean, whatever construction industry, how much of it is it going to thrive beyond this point as well, given it'll take a while for non-essential services to pick up as well. So think about your return on the investment that you're going to make as well. Charindi has a question. Yes, are there any creative ways to compensate staff for working during this curfew period that will also be cost effective for the business?
Yeah. So I'll add to that, Piyush.
Yes.
I'll just share some of the. Okay, so I'll just at the outset of itself, I need to tell you, when you make your decision to compensate your staff in a different way, you need to first assess who your staff is and whether you need this, how are you going to get this skill in case if they decide with the way you decide to move out from you. So that's a very important decision that you are going to make. Therefore, you need to be aware of who your staff is. Now, having said that, you would see most of the companies deciding to get their staff to go on no pay leave and getting them to apply for their annual leave. And then also most of the hotels are now sent their staff home so that they will only be paid their basic salary because their payment structure is defined that way. But companies like us, like KPMG, we are knowledge workers. We need our staff, we make our money with our staff's knowledge. So we can't go into touching the payment because our resource is our staff. So our full effort is to continue pay them full with all their benefits so that we retain our most valuable staff with us. So for each company, that decision has to be made, but very carefully. You need to think of your staff. Can you replace them? or if they decide otherwise with your way of compensation, then what is the damage for your entity?
Just to add to that, I think you need to identify whether it's part of the core business activity, or whether you can outsource, or whether you can ask them to stay at home and do the work. So in this point, I would say maybe sharing resources is something to think of. But like Tamali said, you need to identify which industry and whether that will work for you. So it's a very, and you need to understand that employees are key for your business as well. So it is a very sensitive subject.
Yeah, it is. And some companies are also thinking about cutting back on allowances and things like that, especially if travel was an essential thing to do their job, and now they're not actually traveling to do the job. Then they're just dealing with basics only and not going ahead with all the additional allowances, so that they can keep paying them for longer and making sure everybody is taken care of in the long run as well.
Yeah. I think we have a question. One school of thought is that that they have already been paid for time that they have not worked. I have the problem that only certain staff could get to work, and the workload does not justify all the staff being at work. Yeah. So I think that's a very common question for all of us, I think. That's where you need to first assess and see how are you going to now, especially there is staff that you have paid and there is no work that they're doing right now. So probably one option that you could think is this is going to continue for this month as well. So are you going to communicate to your staff, maybe let's go on unpaid leave for this month, and then you will be back at work and let's resume work again. But when you make those decisions, it has to be carefully made, because you run the risk of losing them.
Yes.
So probably if you're a company who can, withstand this and then still take this cost, and then you look at, using them in a more effective way in times to come. So carefully make that decision. It should be a company specific decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, legal point of view. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. That's because you can't just let employees, you can't just cut down employees or fire them as per the Sri Lankan legal system. So you have to be very careful if you are planning on doing that. But the implications in terms of reputation, which was also spoken about, needs to be taken into consideration, and your goodwill amongst your remaining employees as well. We have time for one more question, Suresh. Are we over time or? Okay, I guess we can take one more question.
Gayani has a question.
Yeah, I'm just building on what I think Janek mentioned about the supply chain. Now, I mean, hoping this COVID crisis will, to a great extent, will be over, and the government will relax the curfew laws and allow the manufacturing operations to resume. Although some industries are to a limited extent are operating, especially to supply the health-related supplies. Now, when you resume, some of the companies' supply chain might get disrupted because most of the suppliers are overseas. And even now, I know I do some work with companies and certain government agencies to try and find sources. It's a huge challenge, right? So in that context, some companies are already trying to localize operation. It's not easy, especially companies like multinationals might have alternative sources and all that. But there are certain organizations even trying to develop masks and various things they're trying to localize. They are struggling a huge. I mean, lot of the time they are, push from pillar to post to find the sources. So that would be a huge challenge to continue the supply chain and sustain it. I think that is something. Do you have any thoughts? How do we really do this? I know it's not an easy thing to suggest, but that's going to be a huge challenge when to continue the supply network in the country. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this Gayani?
Yeah.
So Gayani, I completely agree with you. Only thing I just don't have an answer, but can I give a different perspective? It's just that yeah, supply chain is an issue, and the entire world is going to face this. And this is a very unique situation. I think when we speak to our parents, or even none of them had ever encountered a situation like this where the whole world is in a common chaos. But how, if we could look at situations like this to see whether aren't these situations where we need to think of alternatives, and maybe if we all as industries, like Janek had done with his industry, as industries, if you get together and create these discussions, probably come out with some solutions where you could create new businesses. So how I would like to look at this situation is that's why I said at the beginning also, these are exciting times, especially for startups and small and medium enterprises, because you could change the world, you could change the market. So if you can, like small in industry groups, collaborate and get together and come up with some ways of substituting your supplies or your products, or finding new suppliers, giving opportunities for our own people who's in the country already, probably that's one way of looking at it. Having said that, I understand that this supply chain is going to be a huge challenge, but I also feel because it's a challenge, it will also create opportunities.
But I think the willingness for the operators in the market to share is something that everybody must make up their mind. I mean, I'm glad that after 137 years, the tea industry got together. I mean, they were struggling a lot to do this, and finally COVID made this happen for them, you know, blessing in disguise. So I'm saying, you know, similar situation we didn't see in the retail industry. We know Cargill, Skills, Apico, all of them struggled a great deal, and finally only Satosa got together with Pick Me and did it. And the government got together with the postal service and they ran the last mile for the medicine. So I think there is a problem with our private sector on their willingness to work together. I understand the government industry with Jeff and all, they are doing it very well. Tea industry now with this, they're coming together. I think there is a coordinated effort that is required either from the government point or from professional bodies or through various trade agencies for everybody to get together in this really you know, trying times for the country and for the whole world as well. I think
Dayani, let me add to that. I think if I were to summarize the private sector and how we reacted, I think sometimes we do too much of analysis.
Yes.
and they always say, you know, too much analysis leads to paralysis.
Paralysis,
right?
Yes.
So I think working, you know, from gut, you know, taking those decisions and being very practical. Sometimes we go to think too big without thinking simple solutions.
Exactly.
So I think that is something which the private sector ought to do.
Yeah, true.
Excellent. Right. So, so there are various thoughts which is in our chat box. I mean, there is one thought to say it was meant to be simulated, but commercial banks are not sure whether they're going to get the guarantees to support the loan. So in fact, if you listen to local news, there is a significant mismatch between what is communicated and what is practically done. But I guess these are all teething problems and everyone is in chaos. Once the communication are straightened out, probably some of these benefits that government is intending to give, banks also will try and work them through. Any more questions? Do we have time for another share or any other?
Kamali, I would like to ask your view on the gig economy. How are they going to face this new normal? Any idea? I know Pick Me and them have got together and done that, but do you think there will be opportunity for these people?
Which people?
Gig economy. Gig guys, you know, all these self-employed.
Freelancers, right, Dani?
Demand people, you know.
Yeah, so I if you ask me my personal view, I generally I'm a very positive person. So how I feel is, in fact, yesterday I was talking to a client of mine, of ours, fairly a large client, and then they are going to get impacted with this imports being cut down.
Okay.
So how they are looking at it is, okay, we have the cash, we have the inventories to survive for next 4 months. And it in a way, it's good because we can wipe out our inventories soon after the curfew is lifted. And at the same time, they can improve their cash flows. And what I personally feel is our startups, our local and entrepreneurs, and especially this client, have facilities or they sell to rural areas. What they're saying is, immediately when the curfew is lifted, especially in the other areas, unlike in Colombo, there are people coming into these showrooms to buy because there is now money with the farmers.
Oh,
in fact, I was very surprised to hear that there is money with our local farmers, which is a great thing. And another client of ours was speaking to me day before, and he was saying, we are self-sufficient with rice and vegetables. And this is the first time our farmers have got good money into their hand and they can sell their produce. It's just that if you really see, our people are now slowly getting, though we don't see it here, at least from the vibes or the information that we hear, is people who's locally producing, small timers seem to get their way through. The local economy will, to some extent, will also have a positive impact. I would at least see it that way.
Another example is looking at even who delivers home, right? In terms of goods and groceries, they are not the large chains necessarily that I suppose the majority of us are reaching out to.
Exactly. You're right. I think they have found their formula right now than the bigger players. I think their ramping up capability is I think they're not agile, I would say, right? I mean, they have fixed framework within which they work, and these guys are quite agile and adaptable and quickly, respond to situations.
They say an elephant can't move in a rush, right? But an insect can.
Can, yes, true.
So I think that's our strength at this point.
Yeah.
Right. I think
we're good to go.
And thank you so much. I think there is one more question. You want to take it?
It's more, I think, a share. COVID positively impact boosting technology, usability, even small boutique, doorstep delivery, innovative health equipment come up. Okay, we have a question also. Is it reasonable to think of the business operations during curfew as an isolated operation? Maybe look at it as a separate P&L. What are the pros and cons of that? For example, if you change your business vertical temporary to a cash business. Yeah, so I mean, there's two ways of looking at it. It could be a temporary and an isolated operation, but you also have to start thinking of the new normal that might come up after this. Maybe this isolated operation might be better off, and it might become the new normal for you if you have made changes in the short run. So I think that the answer is a yes and a no. Maybe for you from a practical sense, but in the long run it could become like a permanent solution for you as well.
Anybody so a good example for that will be Yoho Beds, right? So it's a booking platform which was going on credit, and then they converted into the grocery delivery. To survive in the tourism industry in this time, I don't think it's possible. So that's why when they do that shift, and once they go back, once tourism comes back into play, they will shift all their customers, or at least that will be a strategy for them to shift it back to the booking engine. So those are some of the strategies that maybe you should think to thrive in a situation like this.
Yeah. So Charindi, I think that's a good question too. It seems important to survive this patch, and then somehow move through. Maybe you view it as a separate P&L or it's a separate patch. And in that in that run, you might suddenly realize, oh, I think this is the best way to run my business, probably not the earlier way how I've been running it.
Exactly.
So great. I think we're at 5:30 now.
Shabir Naza had raised his hand.
Yeah, the thing is, I wanted to ask a question regarding what's the educational industry is going to do with this. Like, how are the institutes, how are the academics going to come up with new ideas to maintain also the health, like social distancing? Because that's a matter that we have to focus, right? So what are the next steps that the educational industry should be considering right now in the future?
Okay, I'll take a part of that question because it's a fun question. So you'll see that EduTech is booming right now. I'm sure you've seen the apps and things that are coming up. I think a lot of us spend a lot more time online learning things, and we're getting used to the new normal. I think a lot of us are conducting lectures online and going on. So so someone's actually saying we've moved to conducting classes online. So also, if you've seen that Hologo, which was an app that was developed, it's becoming like almost a virtual reality learning experience. I'm sure we'll be able to reach more people. Platforms like that will be used even to enhance our skills and test our skills out. I think I met another person who has something called Cartido, which is very interesting as well, where you can enhance your skills. So if you're in that space or you have the ability to get into that space, I think now is the time, because I think Thamali can share what her children are going through right now.
Yeah, so I think we have Satish here who's at AMDT. He's running AMDT. Satish, you want to share what you're doing? You're in education. If your audio is working. Hi, Satish. Hello.
Your audio is not clear.
Yeah. So anyway, I think he had shared to say that they have started online education already and conducting classes. In fact, if we talk about one industry which will thrive now, would be education. And
just to add to that, I think most of the universities abroad, they are having online classes because they want to encourage social distancing, and they're having the online classes. And when it comes to other activities like working out or gymming, now you see a lot of people doing online training as well. So everybody is moving to indoors and moving into this online platform. So one good thing that we see is
positives and the negatives in that. I think
like the teen
now. So
like in the tea industry, we all got pushed to moving into technology, which is a good thing, I would say.
I'll give you an example. There is this lady who does fitness.
Yes.
And I go for her classes, and she does through Zoom every day. She has an online thing. First week she did it free, and we have a WhatsApp group. And then she now charges 50% of her normal charge, and we do it with her through Zoom. I mean, sometimes everybody figure out a way to do things now. And even the government sector, now my husband is lecturing in the university, they have started for all the government universities now. Today they started off. I mean, the lectures are done for everybody in every nook and corner of the country through online learning. That is something really good, because 90% of the kids only had access to bandwidth issues and all that. I think the government gave free access and all that. So with that is also happening. So then we can actually graduate them early, so that we don't have an employment issue in the country. Otherwise, we have double trouble. We don't have resources to manage. Yeah.
Correct.
And how are the teachers going to?
Sorry?
So how are the teachers going to monetize their classes or courses? Or what they do? How are they going to monetize them?
No, lecturing in the universities anyway, the lecturers get salary. But I know some places online learning is happening. You have to register and you have to pay. I mean, that's like the normal webinars that other people do. So maybe in time to come, that will also happen. You will give us some way to give access for people. And you have to pay for something or whatever before doing that. So it has not come to that as yet. Most of the people are now testing the waters. and trying to promote themselves by doing free programs. Very soon they will also start charging
exactly. And the important thing is, because we can't move out, we have to stick to that and get used to it. So once people are used to it, I think most of them will start using it, and maybe gyms won't have crowds or even
until a vaccine is found. I think this situation will continue, and I'm loving it actually. I don't have to waste time on the road, and I'm doing consulting, so I don't need to waste my time on the road, and my lectures are also now on virtual means, so it's really good. I mean, you can manage the time wisely and spend quality time with your family as well.
And also, guys, you'll be surprised to hear that now my son's in upper school, and he's actually doing his third subject in the first term exam online. As in, he's in a government school, and every day they upload the papers in all 3 languages, and they're supposed to download it, do the papers, scan it, and upload it before the end of the day.
Government school?
Yeah, he's in Royal,
Great.
And right now, as we speak, he's doing the second paper, timing it and doing it. Yes, they can actually look at books if they want to, but, integrity plays, right? So they've been asked to sit for the exams, and every day until the 12th or 13th, they'll be doing exams online.
Yeah, just to add to that, I saw OSUSL also online, but I don't know how active it is. But those are some of the government initiatives which they have taken to speed up this process.
It seems the government has moved faster than the private sector.
Correct.
I mean, some of the things what they are doing, I have some access to that. It's amazing, simply amazing and mind-boggling. Our private sector is analyzing, paralyzing, and I think good now is better than perfect future. We need to really do something fast and move fast. Yeah.
Okay. So unfortunately, guys, I think we need to wrap up. Hatch has given me the let's go wrap up. So thanks everybody. Thank you for attending, and thank you for being great participants. I think it was great because we had an interactive set of participants. I hope we've opened up your minds. And if you've got any questions or you need assistance with anything, feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help you. We want all of you to thrive, and we want you to drive our economy forward. So that's what we're here for. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. See you.